In the heart of New York City's towering skyline, Alexander Harrington ruled his empire from the penthouse office of Harrington Tech, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that revolutionized AI-driven logistics. At 52, Alexander was the epitome of success: sharp suits, private jets, and a net worth that could buy islands. But beneath the polished exterior lay a man hardened by his climb from poverty. Orphaned young, he'd clawed his way up from nothing, forgetting the sting of hunger and the shame of pawn shops. Now, he judged those who reminded him of his past self with a cold disdain, believing anyone in dire straits simply lacked ambition. One crisp autumn afternoon, Alexander stepped out for a rare walk to clear his head after a grueling board meeting. His daughter, Elena, had texted him earlier about her upcoming recital at Juilliard, but he'd brushed it off with a quick, "good luck." Elena, 19 and fiercely talented on the violin, was the light of his life, or so he told himself. In truth, their relationship had grown distant since her mother, Sophia, passed away 5 years ago from a sudden illness. Sophia had been a violinist too, filling their home with melodies that once softened Alexander's edges. Now, the house echoed with silence, and Elena practiced alone in her room, her music a quiet rebellion against her father's emotional absence. As Alexander strolled past a dingy pawn shop on the edge of the financial district, something caught his eye through the grimy window. A man in a janitor's uniform, familiar from his own building, was handing over a weathered violin case to the pawnbroker. The janitor, Miguel Rivera, was in his late 40s, with calloused hands and tired eyes that spoke of endless nights mopping floors. Alexander paused, watching as Miguel argued quietly, his voice laced with desperation. The pawnbroker offered a meager sum, and Miguel hesitated before nodding, pocketing the cash with slumped shoulders. Alexander felt a surge of judgment. "Lazy fool," he muttered under his breath. "Pawning heirlooms instead of working harder. Probably blowing it on booze or lottery tickets." He knew Miguel vaguely, the man who cleaned his office after hours, always polite but invisible. In Alexander's world, people like Miguel were background noise, reminders of failure. He shook his head and continued walking, but the image lingered, fueling a quiet anger. That evening, back in his office, he called HR, "Look into that janitor, Rivera. If he's in financial trouble, we don't need liabilities here." It was a snap decision, born of prejudice rather than evidence. Unbeknownst to Alexander, Miguel's life was a tapestry of quiet sacrifices. A single father since his wife left years ago, he raised his daughter, Isabella, on a shoestring budget in a cramped apartment in Queens. Isabella, 17, was a violin prodigy, her talent blooming under free community lessons. The violin Miguel pawned wasn't just any instrument, it was a family relic, passed down from his grandmother, who had played it during her immigration from Mexico. Its wood held the warmth of generations, and Isabella's fingers danced across its strings like magic. But lately, the music had stopped. Isabella had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder 6 months ago, one that attacked her joints and left her in constant pain. Treatments were expensive, insurance inadequate, and Miguel's janitorial salary barely covered rent. The latest medical bill, $5,000 for specialized therapy, had forced his hand. Pawning the violin broke his heart, but Isabella's health came first. "Papa, don't," she pleaded, her voice weak from fatigue. "We'll find another way." But Miguel knew there wasn't time. He promised to buy it back someday, hiding his tears as he left the shop. Days turned into a week, and Alexander's judgment festered. He approved Miguel's layoff, citing budget cuts, though it was personal. Miguel, devastated but resilient, took odd jobs. Delivering food, cleaning homes, to scrape by. Isabella's condition worsened without the therapy, her dreams of attending music school fading like notes in the wind. She spent her days in bed, sketching melodies she could no longer play, her spirit dimming. Miguel watched helplessly, regretting the pawn but knowing he'd do it again for her. Meanwhile, Elena Harrington navigated her own quiet struggles. At Juilliard, she excelled, but the pressure of her father's expectations weighed heavy. Alexander pushed her toward a practical career in business, dismissing music as a hobby. "Talent doesn't pay bills, Elena," he'd say. But violin was her sanctuary, a connection to her mother. One weekend, browsing pawn shops for affordable strings, her allowance was generous, but she preferred thrift. Elena spotted the violin in the display case. Its aged varnish gleamed under the lights, and something about it called to her. The pawnbroker, sensing her interest, let her test it. The first draw of the bow produced a sound so pure, so resonant, it sent shivers down her spine. "It's got history," the broker said. "Guy who pawned it looked like he was saying goodbye to a friend." Elena bought it on impulse, paying the modest redemption fee with her savings. That evening, in the sprawling Harrington mansion overlooking Central Park, Elena sat up in the living room, eager to surprise her father. Alexander arrived home late, exhausted from negotiations, collapsing into his armchair with a scotch in hand. "Dad, listen to this," Elena said, her eyes sparkling for the first time in months. She lifted the violin to her chin and began to play, a haunting rendition of Bach's Partita No. 2, the notes weaving through the air like threads of memory. Alexander froze. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound, it was unmistakable. Rich, warm, with a subtle vibrato that echoed from his past. This wasn't just any violin. As Elena played, oblivious to his reaction, Alexander's mind reeled back 30 years. He was 22, broke and desperate, living in a rundown apartment after his parents' death. To fund his first startup idea, he'd pawned his most prized possession, his mother's violin, the one she'd played to lull him to sleep as a child. It was no ordinary instrument, a rare 19th-century Cremonese, worth a fortune now, but back then, it fetched just enough to buy a computer and launch his business. He'd always meant to reclaim it, but success swept him away, and shame buried the memory. How had it ended up here? Tears welled in Alexander's eyes as Elena finished, the final note lingering. "Dad? What's wrong?" she asked, setting the violin down. He stood, trembling, and approached, turning the instrument over. There, etched faintly on the inside, "For my Alex, with love eternal, Mom." His breath caught. The violin had journeyed through hands. Miguel's grandmother had bought it decades ago from that same pawn shop, unaware of its origins. It was fate's cruel loop, bringing his past full circle. Who sold this?" Alexander whispered, his voice breaking. Elena explained the pawn shop, describing the janitor's uniform from the broker's tale. Alexander's face paled. Miguel. The man he'd judged and fired. In a rush of guilt, he confessed everything to Elena, the sighting, the judgment, the layoff. Elena's eyes widened in horror. "Dad, how could you? You don't know his story." For the first time, Alexander saw himself through her eyes, a hypocrite, blind to empathy. The next day, Alexander tracked down Miguel, finding him at a construction site, hauling debris. "Mr. Rivera," he said, his voice humble for the first time in years. Miguel stiffened, expecting confrontation. Instead, Alexander apologized, tears streaming. "I judged you without knowing your pain. That violin, it was my mother's. But you needed it more." He handed Miguel a check. Not just for the therapy, but enough to cover Isabella's treatments, education, and more. "Please, let me help." Miguel, stunned, accepted reluctantly. But the true healing came later. Alexander invited the Riveras to dinner. Isabella, frail but bright-eyed, met Elena, and the two bonded over music. Elena offered to tutor Isabella, returning the violin to her with Alexander's blessing. "It belongs with someone who needs its song," he said. As Isabella played tentatively, her fingers regaining strength, Alexander listened, the notes mending old wounds. He reconnected with Elena too, attending her recital, cheering louder than anyone. Months passed. Isabella's health improved, her talent blooming anew. She earned a scholarship to Juilliard, mentored by Elena. Miguel found a better job, at Harrington Tech, no less, in a supervisory role. Alexander, transformed, implemented company programs for employee support, remembering his roots. He and Elena grew closer, filling their home with music once more. In the end, this story isn't just about a violin, it's about the dangers of judgment and the power of empathy. We all carry hidden struggles, and a single act of kindness can rewrite destinies. Remember, success isn't measured by wealth, but by the lives we touch. If this tale moved you, hit that like button, it helps spread these inspiring stories. And subscribe for more heartwarming narratives that remind us of our shared humanity. Who knows? The next one might change your perspective too.